I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's EGGBURT, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
John, I have to admit something, that you sent me that link yesterday. It was actually on johncombest.com, but you sent it to me via email, and I appreciate that. The Blythe Bernhard article on the St. Louis public schools and the crazy, weird stuff going on with...
Did that fuel your entrepreneurial spirit, Brad? You want to create an LLC in Washington and make friends with some behemoth that can toss us some contracts?
John, I have to tell you, I was shocked by that. I mean, and there aren't too many things that shock me anymore. And I have a couple educator friends, and one who is very much pro-system, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying, to the point where if you say something about, well, we're doing the best we can, very defensive stuff like that. And I sent it to her, and her response was, what happened with the school board? Now, that's not really addressed in the article. If you know what we're talking about, the superintendent of schools, what's her name again? You've got this right off the top of your head. Her name?
Yeah, it was someone Scarlett. I can look that up.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I'll pull that up in a second.
She was brought in a little bit over a year ago, and she was recruited out of Seattle. She was like an assistant superintendent or something like that in Seattle. So she's coming up on her second full-time year of being the superintendent, okay? And last Friday, just 5 days ago,
yeah,
essentially she was, and as I understand the article, escorted out of the building along with some of her underlings. And then it was announced that she is on a leave of absence, and because of the fact that quite honestly, I guess you would call this financial wrongdoing, where what she was doing was she has these people who are working for her who are under, she's the head cheese, and she had these people underneath her who were all her handpicked, and almost all of them are from Seattle. It's like they moved the Seattle school system into St. Louis. As a matter of fact, what was the one quote in the article talked about people were referring to the school as the
Seattle Lewis Public Schools.
Yeah, Seattle Lewis Public Schools. And what was going on was there's a clause in apparently whatever the governing documents are.
The standard operating procedure.
Right, that she can give no bid contracts for under $50,000. So she was giving all these no bid contracts to essentially her employees who were starting up companies on the side. So they were essentially double dipping. They were getting their salary as a member of the administration of the St. Louis Public Schools, and then also getting like a check from the St. Louis Public Schools for doing various things. And most of it was consulting work. And some of the topics in there are like, huh? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
researcher. Now here's my favorite, because I don't think this is English. One woman got $49,250 to be a, quote, researcher of best practices to advise. Now, our friend Camelia Peterson does a great job diagramming sentences. I would love for Camelia to diagram just that phrase, researcher of best practices to advise.
Well, all the crazy accounts, and to me, they were all crazy. Here, if I can find this again. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, and for example, Brad, while you're looking for that, a gentleman got $49,000, which, by the way, is a full $1,000 under the threshold if anyone would have to approve it, for training, and because he was going to train folks in, quote, lean business practices and, quote, flow analysis.
Well,
now, flow could refer to, I guess, like a flow state, like, man, I'm feeling the flow. I'm getting a lot of work done today. Or, the long hair thing that like young men did 2022 to 2023, they called it the flow. I think it's disgusting because young men should have short hair and they shouldn't be mistaken for girls. But you get what I'm saying, Brad. Flow analysis is important enough for this gentleman, Devin Cabanilla, to get a 49. And he, by the way, he came straight from Seattle Public Schools.
Matthias Graywood, Chief Financial Officer, previously worked for a mortgage firm in Texas and is listed as Chief Financial Officer for Azamu Group in a post announcing Graywood's arrival 2 months ago, Scarlett said his great sense of humor is absolutely essential in his work, and his warmth and calm demeanor build trust. Fatima Sow was hired as a senior project manager in summer of 2023, promoted to deputy chief to staff in January. She previously served as an intern with the chief of equity at Seattle Public Schools. You go through this whole thing, and it lists, and then it lists, like it goes through the whole thing. Global Citizens Development, founded by new SLPS administrator Nika Lemons, was paid $49,250 between November 1st and February for researcher of best practices to advise. That's what you're talking about. Okay, and then Devin Cabanilla, who was senior continuous improvement project manager at Seattle Public Schools until last year, registered the Washington company Idea Threads in May before landing a $49,000 contract with SLPS for training in lean business management, and flow analysis. Ashley Davis received $35,522 for transportation consulting through a company launched last month, Better Education Partners. Davies lives in the Seattle area and was Scarlett's longtime colleague in Seattle Public Schools. She's just writing checks left and right. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, and so I don't know, Brad, but so here's the thing, and here's what I didn't get from Blythe Bernard's piece here is, I guess the question is, so what? Like, will anybody hold these people accountable? So is this criminal, Brad? Because it appears to me that Keisha Scarlett followed the letter of the law. A $49,250 contract is not $50,000.
Well, but
so if she wants to write a check to her friends, what's wrong with that, Brad?
Well, but it goes on. There are other people. For example, Charles Wright, once a deputy superintendent with Seattle Public Schools, received a $600,000 consulting contract in the spring through his business, Wright & Associates. The SLPS board earlier this month voted down an additional $1.25 million for Wright's. And what they were doing on this one, there was a loophole apparently. Over the $50,000 threshold, she can declare an emergency non-bid contract, and that's what she was doing.
Yeah,
so she can
certainly an emergency. Brad.
Yeah, so she can say, well, there's an emergency. And once again, my one educator friend, who I have a great deal of respect for, her comment was, where was the board? Now, I said, which made her mad, I said, do you really think that the board, I mean, let's be honest, one of the problems that has happened through the years in several of the school districts is the boards are stacked. I mean, am I essentially saying...
You're right. I know where you're going with this. Keep going, Brad.
The boards are stacked in that the people who are on the board were recruited to be on the board by essentially the administration of the school district. But to be more specific, Brad, let's be blunt here. The teachers unions. Exactly right. The teachers unions are, matter of fact, the last and not dissing on Mark Cox, but the last April Muni election where Mark Cox had his list, his big list of all the people he endorsed, and they were all the different school boards, Francis Howell, out in St. Charles County, Francis Howell, Fort Zumwalt, Wentzville, okay, and he endorsed all the conservatives, and every one of them lost. Do you know why, John? You know why.
Because they were opposed by the teachers union.
Yes, and the teachers union organized and put in tons of money. Now, once again, this is not unusual. I used to live in an area that had a fire protection district, and the interesting thing was all the guys who were board members on the fire protection district were all union heads from the city of St. Louis. They were like the union guys who ran the city firefighters union. And once again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. These guys ran for the jobs. They got elected and they became, but there was sort of a little bit of a conflict of interest in my mind that, okay, you've got a bunch of guys.
It's the chicken watching the hen house.
Right.
The fox watching the hen house. So get back to the St. Louis Public Schools thing, Brad. But that's your point though, right?
Well,
I mean, you can't trust a school board which is made up of educrats to keep other educrats in line.
And see, the problem here is, one of the looming problems is they have this transportation issue, which has become a huge problem. And essentially what happened was they had a contract with the bus service, and the bus service last year said, we're out of here. Don't call us. We don't want to do this anymore. Because I think they were losing money on the contract. I think it's never come out. Have you ever read anything about that? Did the bus company...
I haven't read anything about it, no.
Well, the bus
my sense was that they just had enough.
Right. The bus company said, we're done. And the problem is, and there were issues when they couldn't get another bus company to bid on the contract. They couldn't find anybody to bid the contract. So what they're doing is, I think they got First Student that would do some buses, but not nearly as many, and to the point where they're literally hiring Uber drivers, and I'm not kidding when I say that. Am I, John?
No, you're correct.
They are hiring Uber drivers, and they're hiring minibuses, and they're doing this and they're doing that. And some of the kids, they talked about the high school kids, are going to get year-long passes so they can ride Metrolink and the city buses. And I'm going like, what in the hell is going on? And
so have you seen anything in these stories about accountability, Brad? So like, what's the harm if Keisha Scarlett sends a lot of money to her friends? I'm guessing they'll never have to pay it back because, Brad, they studied flow. They did an analysis of flow. Like, you can't take the money, you can't claw the money back after this gentleman studies flow. So what's the harm?
Well, what do you mean?
Go to the East St. Louis school district and get hired and do the same thing. What's the harm, Brad?
Well, I know you're being facetious when you say that.
I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek, but I guess what I'm saying is that she won't pay any penalty for this, Brad.
Well, but what's frustrating to me is she's violated a sacred duty of educating the kids of the city of St. Louis. That's what the harm is. And once again, let's go back to, and I mention him all the time, and not that he's my buddy and he does any favors for me, but I do like Steve Ellman, the county executive, and I'm not saying this to help him get reelected because he ain't getting reelected. He's essentially announced that he's done in 2026 and he's getting out of there. I talked about this on that he did an interview. I saw an interview. I can't remember who the interviewer was. Very good interview. And they essentially said, why is St. Charles County the place where everybody's moving to? And he said, there are two important things you have to have in a community for people to want to live there. You have to have good schools. You have to have good law enforcement, which brings safety to the residents. Okay? Two things. The city of St. Louis has neither. They have a crappy school system, and now it's even worse, and they have substandard law enforcement. And I'm not making fun of the cops that are doing the job there because they're pushing that 10,000-pound boulder uphill because they get no support from the mayor's office. They're not hiring any new police. There's nobody, there in the, at their, I'm going to say at Clark, but they moved down. Where are they on? Are they on?
Sure, whatever it is. We get the point.
There's nobody giving them attaboys every day. They had to deal with Kim Gardner, who, had the list of officers. And once again, I say again, if I was a criminal in St. Louis, I would say, I want that list of the officers that Kim Gardner will not prosecute any crimes they bring, because that's where I'm going to commit crimes, where those guys work. See, this is just, to me, and what's so frustrating about this is, once again, my conversation with this educator, who shall remain nameless, she said to me, the district she worked in, here it is, today's July 30th, tomorrow will be, Thursday will be the 1st of August, okay? In the district she's in, they start in a couple of weeks, okay? She told me in several schools, they are 8 to 10 teachers short, and she teaches grade school, okay? So it's not like you're missing like a science teacher. You're missing somebody who was in a classroom for the entire day with grade school kids. And I said to her, this is the interesting thing, I said, well, what are they going to do? And her response was, they will hire a full-time substitute because they don't have enough people applying for the jobs. And the crazy part of this is, her response is, and this is how things make no sense in education, if you are a full-time substitute, you make more than a regular teacher. Now,
well, I'm sure you do. Now, do you qualify? But you don't qualify for health insurance, I'm sure.
No, but still, let's say you're, and they get a lot of people who, in most of the districts. Matter of fact, I will tell you this in full disclosure. At one point in time, I was goaded by a couple of my teacher friends, and this is going back 2 or 3 years ago. I was goaded by a couple of my teachers' friends about I was being critical of education. And the one teacher friend of mine said to me, if you don't like it, why don't you change it? Why don't you substitute? So I called a couple districts, and I found it's interesting. The districts don't hire substitutes anymore. You know who hires the substitutes?
Is it a third party?
Kelly.
Yeah, temporary staffing, right?
Yes, the old Kelly girls, what they used to call Kelly girls. Now it's just Kelly. And you go through them, and they give you little online tests, and you do this, do that. And once you qualify, they run a background check on you the whole bit, and you work for them. So you don't get paid from the school district. You get paid from the temp service. And once again, the problem is if you are 16, 17, 18 years old, and you're deciding what you're going to do with your life, and even though you had teachers that changed your life, and you have teachers that were an important part of you growing up, and you thought to myself, man, I would like to be a teacher. And then you look at the mess that is the St. Louis City schools, you go like, hey, I don't think I want to be a teacher, right? You know what I'm saying?
What you want to do is you want to go to school and study flow analysis.
Right.
So I think that would be, you and I are generally not on the bandwagon of everybody needs a traditional higher education. But I think if you could go to Rankin, or I don't know, does Sanford-Brown offer a class in flow analysis, Brad?
Sanford-Brown is long gone. The federal government.
No, I thought one of your projects for August was revitalizing them.
Well, the federal
Didn't
government.
you buy the domain name? But you bought .co. And then you use the punchline, because we couldn't afford the M. So if you go to sanfordbrown.co, you can sign up for flow analysis. And they were the original member of the Westplex Chamber of Commerce.
John is once again. Good thing I like John, because
it's a good thing, isn't it, Brad?
Otherwise, I'd be PISSED. But see, don't get me going on that. The federal government, and I've said this before, the federal government killed Sanford-Brown. They killed Vatterott College. And how did they kill it? Because they took over the loan program, and then they said, oh, these people graduating from Sanford-Brown, they're not getting jobs. Well, guess what? Let's look at the people that graduate from Mizzou and
wash you with a fine arts degree in
right,
painting.
Right. Or Southeast Missouri State or Truman State. Not every one of those people walks out of there with a job, but yet Rankin Tech, I think they have like 100% placement. You graduate. Matter of fact, I know for a fact that there are some areas of study at Rankin that they talk about. We have 3 job openings for every one graduate. I mean, think about that for a minute. But yet the federal government yanked the funding from Sanford-Brown and Vatterott because they said there's too many people graduating with degrees that don't get a job in their field. Okay, once again, let's take a look at Mizzou, right? Okay, enough of that.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?